All right, everyone. Welcome to Digital Conversations. I'm your host, Billy Bateman, and today I am joined by Mike Lewis, co-founder and CRO at Click 360. Mike, how you doing, man?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. We're going to talk a lot about intent and figuring out, which visitors matter and where they're coming from. But before we get into that, just tell us a little bit about yourself and about Click 360.
Yeah. It's funny. I never know how far back to go on these kinds of questions. Like, do I go back to the dawn of time or do we just start with the company? I'll tell you what I think is super interesting and sort of it'll bring us into this conversation is the way in which I sort of ended up with my partner here at Click 360 is throughout my career, I started in a very commoditized sales space where, there's really no way to actually know what a qualified lead is. It was a numbers game. The more people you contact, the more people you hopefully convert. And then from there, I actually moved into more of the world of marketing where we were putting signs on walls and hoping people would call. And there's a problem with hope in marketing, right? There's really no place for it. Gosh, I hope somebody calls me. And so I've been whittling down the ability to give marketers the information needed to know where their budgets are best allocated. So when I originally bumped into my partner, who was in the process of, building out this marketing intent machine, that's where I really saw that there was an opportunity to give marketers that immediate feedback on what's working and what's not. So what the Click 360 platform really is it's a customer journey optimization platform. It uses a form of AI called deep learning to recognize that behavioral intent that says this person's more likely to convert to revenue than this person. So that marketer can actually reach back and say, these marketing channels actually source those people most likely to convert to revenue. Yeah. So we move away from that dreaded guess and test where, I go back to that sign on a wall, do a bunch of marketing, hope somebody calls, to being able to measure in real time that behavioral intent that says, there's signaling in patterns of behavior that says this person's going to buy. And so a marketer can actually affect that deal by seeing that behavior.
Yeah. All right. So I love it.
That's where we are today. And, the biggest problem that we're solving for, especially with, third-party cookies going away in the iOS 14 privacy update, the big problem we're solving for marketers is just understanding which marketing channels work so they don't have to do that, like I said, that dreaded guess and test.
Yeah, we all have to do it to a certain degree, but
exactly.
After a little while, you shouldn't have to, you should be like, okay, these are our channels that produce, and this is where we should be sending them. So tell me a little bit more about how you guys are helping people figure out which channels are actually working.
Yeah, it's a great question. And even to what you just said, we have to do a little bit of the guesswork in the beginning. The hardest part, and something I think COVID exacerbated for a lot of people, is understanding that humans are not like singular entities, right? The funnel is not everyone fits into this one size fits all funnel and ends up with revenue. There's a multitude of different funnels for every single person, every single behavior, every single product. And you typically have multiple ways people convert to revenue. The problem for marketers too is that behavior changes daily. Minutely. If you think about what did your competitor do? Did they change price? Did they add a feature? All of a sudden your behavior changes, so your funnel changes. So we're really helping marketers understand not only what's the most valuable place for a certain marketing piece and where it goes in the funnel, but as that behavior changes, how to adapt with that so that you're not creating your funnel on day one and hoping it's the same funnel and working on day 365.
Yeah. I like it, dude. Everything's changed, in the last 12 months. What we saw with our customers, all of a sudden conversations, web visitors last April, last March, just through the roof compared to where they were the prior year.
Sure.
And, but conversion didn't really go up, in fact, it actually took a little bit of a hit because we had to change how we were engaging people, where this was like the only channel we had for a while. And still for a lot of businesses that, we're used to, like, hey, we go to trade shows, we put on our own events, we get to rub shoulders with people. It's like, no, it's all coming through your website now.
Did you see a difference in the way people engage with chatbots as well? Because as everyone started going online, I'm assuming the chatbot became a ton more valuable in that customer journey.
Yeah. We saw more people trying to engage with the bot, and not just like prospects. A lot of that increase for our customers was customers, coming, trying to get help, trying to contact people. And the bots, if I see a bot on somebody's site, I assume like, hey, I can get connected to somebody right away. Not always not always the case. Depends on what you want to do. And a lot of our customers adapted and decided, where we didn't give them an option to get connected to our support team through the bot on the homepage. It was very sales, marketing focused. Adding that in helped quite a bit because, we all know it was dark times a year ago, wondering,
Right.
a lot of us are like, are we going to be in business? Are we going to survive? Like you've got to keep those current customers happy. And people that made the pivot, added that, were more open and more accessible to their customers, weathered the storm fairly well.
I think so. To that piece right there, and what was going through my mind as you were saying that is, you said it was salesy. It was like the bot was too salesy or too markety. And something I even had a conversation with somebody about yesterday is, in a lot of these businesses, the thing that is super hard to do is understand intent. When somebody raises their hand and says, I'm interested, what does that mean? So I always say, one of the biggest problems in sales and marketing, I'm sure you guys know, is there's this clash in the middle where marketing spends a ton of money driving leads and then hands them off to sales, and sales says, well, these aren't qualified.
Yeah.
Or you've got somebody who raises their hand and says, I'm interested in a demo. And as soon as they realize they have to talk to a salesperson, they back out almost immediately. Like, I'm not there yet.
I'm not that interested.
I see where you guys have this ability to sort of mediate between the two and say, yes, this person's interested, but they may not be at that sales stage yet. They may just want a little bit more information, and they don't need to be with somebody who has, commission breath on their mind if they're not ready for that yet.
Yeah. No, we've started giving people intent scores within our own product, so we can say, okay, like, hey, let the bot just engage with these guys that are lower level intent. But once they've, raised their hand and said, I want to talk to somebody, like, dude, you got to talk to them like right away.
Right.
Right away. I was actually just going over this with our consulting team. They were running some numbers on, okay, how fast do you respond to that chat request once they've raised their hand? And what does that look like for actually having a productive conversation with the person? If you respond in under a minute as compared to that 1 to 2 minute window, you're 130% more likely to have a conversation. And if you're still in that 1 to 2 minute window, as opposed to anything past it, you were 119% more likely to have a conversation. So it's all about, you got to get to them quick. You got to engage. Once they've raised their hand, they're not going to stick around for long.
Yeah. And so, that's really one of the root problems we want to get to and solve for, is because, as you also know, the person who raises their hand may also not always be the end decision maker.
Yeah.
So really what we're trying to do behind the scenes, that great old analogy of, the tip of the iceberg is what you see, and then everything underwater is the problem they're trying to solve. I think something like over 56% of the buying decision is done by the time somebody raises their hand.
Yeah.
Well, really, to our topic today on intent, we're trying to understand what caused that hand to raise, first of all. And does this have the same kind of intent that we would expect for someone with this behavior? So that as you jump on that phone, you first of all, if you get on within a minute or 2 minutes, you're going to do much better. But second of all, you've got some background as to, these kinds of companies tend to buy this kind of way. And we know that even though we have this hand raised, we still need to see the CEO or the CMO or somebody else to get.
So are you tracking all the different people from accounts on the website, and then even taking that back to like seniority level as well?
It's a super good question. When we originally built the platform, and we're about 22, 23 months into this point, it was originally meant for the complex B2B sales cycle where you did, have multiple decision makers, and you wanted to be able to differentiate between those behaviors.
Yep.
So that, if you were selling complex IT solutions, you knew that you didn't have true account intent until the IT person had been there, right? The guy who's actually going to plug it in.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward through COVID, where everyone's trying to figure out e-commerce, it's a very similar situation where it's not necessarily differentiating between the people in the account, but it's the 9, 10, 12 ways people convert to revenue when they come back from a social media site, come back from an email campaign, return from an SMS, and just understand that behavior.
Okay.
So,
and then I want to dig into just a little bit more on what behaviors on the site. So like, hey, I'm coming, I'm looking, how are you guys seeing, like, okay, I look at this combination of pages, I look at this specific page, is it lengthy time? Like what should, people be paying attention to?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a multitude of things, and a lot of what's out there is measuring activity. And I would say activity doesn't necessarily indicate intent.
Yeah.
So the original thing people were doing was what's called a lead score, which is a great way to get started if you've done nothing.
Yep.
So you take it's got a little bias built into it, which can sometimes be the problem, but it's a great way to get started. But basically you say, I think these behaviors are valuable, so I weight them as such. So then you can start to create some kind of value score, intent score based on that. But what I would look at for people in general is not so much how much did they do, but yes, is there a pattern that you can discern from other behaviors that converts to revenue? So you can do a lot of reverse multi-touch attribution with platforms like, HubSpot, a few others, where you can see every page they touched. So if you can start to see which ones of those over time have dollars associated with them, you have some information, right, as to do some of that, behavioral scoring. The biggest difference, the way we're doing it, is we're doing it in real time. We're doing that pattern and sequencing. So not that they touched it, it's where and when. Yeah, everything you mentioned is a big piece of it. Time spent, source they came from, things they look at, order and sequence in which that happens.
Okay. All right. So you said you started out with B2B sales and marketing. I'm guessing you expanded a little bit. Like where are you seeing the best success for customers?
The best success are the people that are having the biggest pain, which is, the folks that are spending gobs of money against marketing efforts, and they have very little insight into which dollars drive the best returns. So the best successes are those folks where, they spend money on the paid ads, the cost per clicks and all of that. And they just need to know which of them are actually driving revenue. And right now, the biggest problem for them is they can see most of the clicks, they can see most of the activities, but they cannot connect the behavior to the activities. So we're having a lot of success in places where they're spending enough money to want to know which monies are working best, right? They've got enough activity going on. They need to be able to prioritize, when 5 hands raise, which hand do you call first? If you can call a 5, great, do it. But if you got to focus on, if you got one salesperson and 200 leads, first of all, you're doing a great job, right?
Yeah.
But if you have to be able to prioritize your efforts and your budgets, and it's not just, hey, I've got some money and I can throw it at marketing, and if it works great. It's the people who really want to hone in on a dollar spent on channel 1 is worth more than the dollar spent on channel 2.
Awesome, man. Okay, so if I'm like, let's say, I'm a demand gen marketer, I'm new into figuring this out, or a new role.
Yeah.
I don't have a tool like Click 360 yet, but I've got Google Analytics and some good web analytics tools. What would you say I should start looking at and tracking just on my own to get a good idea of where I should be spending my money?
That's a really good question. And I usually defer to marketers on that, because I think marketers are much better at this than I am. But they should start to look at, set up your goals in things like Google Analytics. It's a free tool. It's great. You can set up the goal to be how many downloads did I get of a certain document, how many meetings are booked. I mean, whatever your metric is. There's a really smart marketer here in the Twin Cities who said, measure the data that gets you the information that gets you the revenue. So yeah. Well, if your key metric is going to be demos, and you have a good idea of how many demos you need to get a certain amount of revenue, then, set up your goals and conversions for, getting demos done.
Yeah.
So That's a great place to start.
I like it, man. Okay, man. Before we wrap, is there anything that I should have asked you? You're like, hey, Billy was smart. He actually would ask me this question.
No, Billy is smart.
Thank you.
No, I really do like what you guys are doing, which is probably what brings us here today. But the one thing I would say that I think people should know in general, especially as we're sitting here, beginning of 2021, as the iOS updates and privacy updates and third-party cookie updates, as that stuff starts to go away and marketers can't do what they used to do, which is pay for eyeballs.
Yeah.
Start creating those first party customer journeys. Marketers are really good at storytelling and creating brands. And right now, we're in a space where we pay for eyeballs, and we need to get back to doing that organic thing where we create really cool content that allows people to subscribe, and self-align with the business. I think now is the time to start figuring out, what our plans going to be for 2021 that drives organic traffic, so we don't have to do as much of this, spray and pray, pay for eyeball stuff.
Yeah. Okay, man. I love it. Dude, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
It's been awesome. And if people want to reach out and learn more about you or continue the conversation, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way if they just want some information, they can check the website. It is click360.io, or you can reach out to me at mike.lewis@click360.io if you have specific questions, and we'll chat from there.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Take care.